Welcome to Alliance Military Database. Classified information requested. Establishing secure connection. Secure connection confirmed.
What would you sacrifice? Annihilation is one decision away. Those two quotes from the trailer of Mass Effect sum up what you were about to experience. There are many who have already played this by the time I thought of giving it a try, and I hope to all the video game gods out there that there will be more after me as well. I first opened this game because I had access to Game Pass, and I had been told by a friend of mine how good it was. Mass Effect came out in 2007, and by that point I was only playing PS3 games. It wasn't until I got my first full-time job that I saved up for an Xbox One, and even later still till I got Game Pass. I didn't see what the big deal was. I was more excited to play the Fable games again, which, spoiler alert, I still haven't actually finished replaying the first one. I'd never played Fable 2 or 3. I seem to make a habit of not finishing games, which is what brought me to starting the Play Every Game I Own challenge. I was wrong to have waited so long. It was on a whim I decided to download it, and I also gave updates along the way to my friend who wanted to know how it was going. I think that it's a good testament to a game if someone wants to know how your playthrough went, and because this is a game about choices, I now know why they might have wanted to know all the decisions I made, at least the big ones. As per most RPGs, you get to make your own character. I always try to make a character based on what I look like, mixed with how I wish I look like. I think there's a few of us gamers that do that. You also choose your background, as well as your class. I chose Soldier, to play it safe, as magic or other sources of power can be complex when you're starting a new RPG. As for background, I just went with what sounded interesting. Ruthless Commander sounded nice in my head, but then I wanted to go deeper and thought, why is Shepard ruthless? The best fit felt like Colonist. Of course, a huge traumatic moment in your past would influence you as a commander going forward. The cinematic at the beginning is short but sweet. It gives you a hint at the story and, interestingly enough, references the choices you've made already. You now know something is important enough to need you to protect the galaxy, and it's based on your history as an Alliance soldier and your past. The game does a very good job of inserting your character into the story, and it doesn't feel forced or out of place.
Is that the kind of person we want protecting the galaxy?
That's the only kind of person who can protect the galaxy.
I'll make the call.
Your first actual interaction of the game is a dialogue option that introduces you to your first choice. Though it's a small one, depending on your 3 choices you'll get your first Paragon or Renegade points. If not in the first conversation with Joker and Kaidan, then not too long later with the other characters you'll meet.
Commander Shepard to meet me in the comm room for a debriefing.
You get that, Commander?
Great. You pissed the captain off and now I'm gonna pay for it.
Don't blame me. The captain's always in a bad mood.
Only when he's talking to you, Joker.
It's cool seeing how you can respond, and it starts to get you thinking, how would your Shepard respond? And it becomes more personal to you. Many players could play this game and all do slightly different things for different reasons, and that becomes their story. Now you're not just in the story with the Shepard you made, you're also making the story based on what your Shepard will do. I fell in love with this game, and I hope to enlighten those who might want to give it a try for themselves. I will avoid spoilers because I want this to show what kind of game this is, and the option to give it a shot one day.
3, 2, 1.
It wouldn't be fair to judge the graphics when they have been massively, effectively, improved in the Legendary Edition. But I will be talking about how I experienced the game the first time, because that's the game I fell in love with. I played the Xbox 360 version on my Xbox One. That being said, it was still an impressive looking game, even for its time. I absolutely give credit to the game developers and concept artists that created all the environments for every planet you step on. It has a pretty linear design when it comes to exploring on foot, which makes it easy when you're a loot goblin like me who has to have everything that's collectible before moving on. There were definitely times where I preferred having a given path to follow, especially when compared to driving the Mako all around a planet to find little artifacts and side mission locations. I enjoyed my time driving around different planets and taking in the different environments, but it wasn't long before I found myself having to listen to podcasts at the same time as exploring, only pausing when coming across points of interest. But I'm not hating on the gameplay. To be fair, you can nitpick every game you play. There were certainly more positives than negatives, and though the Mako did eventually get repetitive, I had some fun with it too. But I'll get into the Mako later. The side quests themselves, though the story was different for each one, brought you to different locations that started to look familiar after a while. There were maybe 2 or 3 different layouts that would be copied and pasted assets to be reused again in a different mission. And I get it's a big open world-ish game, so it's probably easier doing that, but it's not very exciting after a while. The stories you come across can be interesting enough to disregard that, but they are short.
Thank you. Thank you for saving me from those things.
Commander, that's him. That's Dr. Saleon.
What? My name is Hart. Dr. Hart. Please, get me out of here.
Are you sure it's him?
Positive. There's no escape this time, Doctor. I'd harvest your organs first, but we don't have the time.
Replaying them is more for getting experience and loot to better upgrade your character. Not only did space exploration take you to different planets, but whenever you looked up at the atmosphere, you'd see the most unique extraterrestrial sky in each and every place. I encourage you to gaze up as much as you can because it really is breathtaking how the cosmos look. Plus, when you're bored driving the Mako, sometimes it's a nice change of scenery from looking at rocks or mountains all the time. You really feel like you're in space.
Securing point.
And with space comes different species. Aliens are more common than humans, and it really brings into perspective just how wide the universe must be. Their designs are so varied and interesting that I don't think I could have come up with even half the ideas they created for the different species in this game. From the Asari to the Elcor, there are all walks of life that exist outside our Milky Way galaxy, which quickly becomes very tiny in comparison with the rest of the universe.
My people have a saying, seek the enemy of your enemy, and you will find a friend.
I think we're gonna get along just fine, Rex.
Let's go. I hate to keep Fist waiting.
When interacting with people, their gestures and expressions feel solid. They shrug or shake their head and even pace at times. It humanizes the conversation so it feels more real, and I think that's pretty impressive for its time. When comparing this game to more recent games with dialogue trees, this one performs smoother and more natural in my opinion. And I feel like that's a hard thing to make models perform as naturally as they would in real life. The one thing that does feel a bit awkward is the cutscenes. It can look a bit weird how they react to things, as well as the action shots the camera uses during them. It feels like there's a guy with a jetpack controlling the camera, while the actors of the movie are doing their first take of a film. But other than that, I'd say it holds up pretty well. In general, when looking at the old 360 version, it held up alright. Despite the fact it has a bit of a blurry looking filter on it like a middle schooler's first Instagram account, and the lighting and textures aren't perfect, these are all things they fixed in the Legendary Edition. And to be fair, when I played it, I actually didn't notice it too much. I definitely did after the Legendary version came out, and there were comparison videos on YouTube, but that's just how games age. I'd say it's still replayable today in its original form, but of course, go for the Legendary Edition if you can. It also cleans up the UI to look better too, and the subtitles take up less of the screen. But if you like them big, there is a setting in the Legendary Edition to adjust the subtitle size. As an RPG, there are elements of it in there. Not nearly as complicated as Elder Scrolls Online, for example, but you can decide where to put your points when you level up, as well as go through your inventory to equip the better weapons and armor for you and all your squad mates. I'm sure there is a strategy with the armor and the attachments, especially if you play on a harder difficulty than normal, but I never planned my attire or weaponry in the first game at all. It's more fun for me than micromanaging every piece in your inventory, and I like to spend as little time in the menus as possible because I'm having such a great time playing the game. I then just sell everything I'm not using. There is an inventory limit anyways, so selling will probably happen for you eventually. When getting into the combat and game design, it's hard not to judge it harshly. When I first played it, I immediately noticed how clunky it felt. I played a soldier class, so I had access to all the gun skills, but I mainly stuck to sniper. I've been playing the Legendary Edition recently and completely forgot how much the sniper used to sway when you were low leveled in the original Mass Effect. There is nothing more nauseating than aiming down your sight and that thing wobbled like Shepard had just drank a whole bottle of rum. But as you leveled up your skill, it became much easier to use and it was my favorite weapon. I also forgot to use my companion's powers for a while because I wasn't really used to the idea of pausing mid-battle and aiming at an enemy to use the ability. I tried it at first, but I hadn't realized you had to actually point at an enemy for your squad mates to use their powers. So I was essentially just activating their abilities and nothing would work the way I was trying to, so I thought the game was broken. I understand that we as gamers can usually learn things through trial and error because we've played so many games and learned tricks along the way. But gamers like us take for granted what it's like starting from scratch with no past gaming experience at all. Even though I didn't try to use the powers again for a long time, I figured it out by messing around with the power wheel. Maybe the game did say in the tutorial that you needed to be aimed at an enemy to use the powers effectively, or maybe it just told you how to use your powers and assumed you'd know what to do. My first instinct was only to aim for my character, and that my squad mates would choose their targets on their own. You can get the hang of it. I would just like to point out that for new gamers, this might not be something they figure out, and then they miss out on a whole part of the game, and one that's very enjoyable. Most people just set their squad mates to use their powers at will, but I personally liked setting them to defensively use their powers, because as a sniper soldier class, I always struggled against enemies with shields or barriers. When I'd go to use a squad member's power to help take down their shields, they would have used it already, so I was swarmed when I wanted to live the sniper dream. And that's just a personal thing for me, but it's still a good heads up to have if you want to use your friend's powers in combat. When it came to combat, you received more experience when you hopped out of the Mako and shot any and all enemies on foot when exploring planets. I even got so experience hungry that I'd weaken a Thresher Maw as low as I could with the vehicle, and then when it was safe enough, I'd hop out and finish the kill on foot. I know they changed it in the Legendary Edition because I tested it to see for myself, and it was the same experience in and out of the Mako. That makes it easier when grinding those planets. Not that I didn't trust the internet, but I had to see for myself. Definitely took longer taking down any Geth bases on foot than using the Mako in the original game. Speaking of the Mako, here's something I wish the original game had, but didn't. Speed boosters. Which, by the way, in my most recent replay of the series on Legendary Edition, I didn't find out until near the end, so, yep. I don't know if the game said at any point if there's speed boosters, but I didn't use them. For a while. And they save so much time climbing those steep mountains because my usual trick was to find that weird specific texture and angle my way up mountains until I could slowly climb my way over. I know there's a meme out there too that specifically calls this out where Shepard is driving the Mako over all sorts of terrain and Garrus tells him that they could always, go around the mountains. But no one has time for that, Garrus. No one. That's not to say I didn't play around with it for a bit when I first hopped into it. I tried to use a jump boost off cliffs to get massive air, and the first thing I remember doing was trying to do a donut. I had played Halo 2 before, and the mechanics were pretty similar, if just a bit clunkier. I can tell you now though, if there had been a building to try to force the Mako in, I would have 100% tried it. While the Mako is a beast of its own, I personally have outgrown the side quests that require you to collect a certain amount of one thing. I did it once when I had gotten Platinum for Assassin's Creed 2 for PS3, with the Feathers quest. And as much as I love getting those trophies, I don't know if I have the heart to do it again for my PS4. While saying that, Mass Effect 1 has not 1, but 7 collectible quests out in space, and 1 on the Citadel for the Keepers. I did it on my first playthrough because I also like doing all the side quests that I can. I guess I'm a bit of a completionist, but I did it.
Please do not disturb the Keepers. Please do not disturb the keepers. Please do not disturb the keepers.
Some of them do end up being worth it to a degree in future games, but not all. And from what I've seen online, they do give some good experience and maybe money, but that's totally up to you. Just personally, I feel like they aren't the most exciting side quests. Despite that, there are some really interesting side quests I did enjoy. The stories brought a different outlook on the universe as a whole. Those with L2 implants for biotics that were struggling with side effects from the devices, as well as Cerberus experiments that brought the question of whether furthering humanity was worth losing some of our morality. It brought to light the issues that this world has, and made you feel invested even if it wasn't related to the main story. It was also the main way I learned about the lore and history of the game.
Message for you, Commander. Just came in over a secure channel.
Shepard, this is Admiral Kahoku. I found out who set that trap for my men. The ones killed by the Thresher War. Damn, I hope you get this message. It was a group called Cerberus. An Alliance Black Ops organization. Top secret, highest level security clearance. They vanished a few months ago. Dropped right off the grid. Nobody knew where they went or what they were up to. They've gone completely rogue, Shepard. They're conducting illegal genetic experiments, trying to create some kind of super soldier.
There's a lot of lore introduced throughout the game, and as much as I love my fiction, I definitely read about 2 codexes in the menu before I stopped reading them altogether, and just picked up what lore I could through context clues or having conversations throughout the game. It's in-depth, and I appreciate the detail the developers put into this world. It certainly makes it feel full and lived in. You get experience whenever you examine a codex entry, giving you more information on the world. I appreciate that the game awards you for exploring and examining different places and things, but I wasn't as determined to get everything in that context. From what I've seen, there was a lot of love put into them, and for those who like reading the deeper lore, it's nice to know you can always check it out. That being said, you can tell this game focuses more heavily on the story and interactions than on combat, which is okay with me because the characters are beautifully written. It's easy to fall in love with each character, and I mean that in more ways than one. Not only do you grow attached and learn more about your squad mates, but there are also romance options, which are intriguing. I'm a bit of a sucker for romance in games such as Stardew Valley or Fallout 4, but I like to think BioWare isn't afraid to hold back on getting to know your love interests, and it makes for a really personal connection. Most games I've played do not have the same level of depth and character design as this one does.
That is why I find you so fascinating. You were marked by the beacon on Eden Prime. You were touched by working Prothean technology.
Sounds like you want to dissect me in a lab somewhere.
What? No, I did not mean to insinuate. I never meant to offend you, Shepard. I only meant that you would be an interesting specimen for an in-depth study. No, that's even worse.
Calm down, Liara. I was only joking.
Joking? Oh, by the goddess, how could I be so dense? You must think I am a complete and utter fool. Now you know why I prefer to spend my time in the field with data disks and computers. I always seem to say something embarrassing around other people. Please, just pretend this conversation never happened.
There aren't a lot of games out there that can make you fall in love with not just a few characters, but a whole set with their own personalities that shine.
I was just watching some mail from home.
Oh, before I go, we saw Caden in a news vid about the Normandy. He's cute. Later, sis.
Let's pretend this never happened.
Are you interested?
Garrus with his side remarks or Caden with his sincerity, there's little moments that make you smile or laugh, as well as fall for the ones you're going to be spending your time with for the majority of the game.
Shepard?
I found this armor. Does it belong to you?
Let me see. Damn. This is it. Hard to believe my ancestors wore this piece of crap. But at least it's back where it belongs. Thanks, Shepard. I might be starting to like you after all.
You getting soft on me, Rex?
Just because I like you doesn't mean I wouldn't kill you.
It couldn't have been easy trying to set up a system that handles dialogue along with a morality system. When choosing between both Paragon and Renegade options, the conversation still flows naturally.
You've been given command of an advanced human warship for your missions. Is there anything you'd like to say about it?
Actually, the Normandy was co-developed by human and Turian engineers. Its design incorporates many innovations, all of which are classified, I'm afraid.
So the Turians have knowledge of the Normandy that is being kept secret from the Alliance public? Do you think it was appropriate to hand Earth's most advanced warship over to the Citadel?
Miss Al-Jalani, I wear the Alliance uniform, and if you think anyone other than me says where the Normandy can go, you're sadly mistaken.
Speaking of Paragon and Renegade, I've heard the system can be complicated. It definitely encourages you to choose one or the other, but you can switch it up to better fit the dialogue the way you want Shepard to be. You just have to remember that there will be choices that may be grayed out if you do not stick to one more than the other. There's also a quest you get once you reach 80% of either morality, so just know if you played like I did with my first Shepard, you might miss out on that quest. To be honest though, I had more fun answering the way I thought my Shep would, instead of focusing on pure Paragon or Renegade. I'm doing a Renegade only run, and there's been times where I missed out on future things because of my Renegade options. For obvious reasons, I won't say too much, but I will say it's a more violent and sad outcome for those around Shepard. It also feels like you're more detached from those on the ship and you don't get to know them as well, so feel free to play the way you want to, because that's what's important. All in all, the story is fantastic, and the choices you make really do matter. The combat may not be great, but if I were to do it all again, I would suggest playing with any class that's not soldier, because using your biotics or tech abilities is a better experience. The worlds you explore are unique, or try to be, and the people you interact with fill out a large chunk of the game. It's hard to forget most of them, and I think that says a lot when there are so many NPCs to meet. I will always promote this, but if you are into music or appreciate a good score when you hear one, I suggest checking out live performances for your favorite music. Mass Effect is no exception, and when I went to look up what instruments were used for this game, I came across a couple videos on YouTube, and if they don't send goosebumps up your arm, then I don't know what will. To be fair, live performances are hard to beat, but when you take away the game and only have the music track, you can hear the emotion and message it's trying to convey. You can say that for most music, it's true, but what Mass Effect does beautifully is put you in the world. You feel like you're in space. You feel this suspense that's growing at the start of the game as you're introduced. A bass line fills in with a light 80s synth feel and orchestra. Eventually, another layer of synth kicks in and the music rises before the title Mass Effect appears, crescendoing until it relaxes once again. Bringing us to another build-up as we see Shepard walk through the ship to the command deck.
Initiating transmission sequence. Commander? Board is green. Approach run has begun.
Building the intensity one more time before it crescendos with the ship jumping through the relay.
Hitting the relay in 3, 2, 1.
The mix of 80s and orchestral sounds are interesting, but fit. I feel like the 80s sound is a nod to most sci-fi movies, and it's easy to buy into the idea that it has a spacey sound, whereas the orchestral instruments bring the realness of the moment. This is a personal take from me, but the soundtrack is fun and intense. There are even moments it has a spooky and unearthly vibe, depending on the mission. It emotionally can pull you to what you should feel at that time, and they expertly interweave the music tracks so they blend smoothly into one another. One of my favorite tracks is the Thorian, with its dark feel and foreboding sound. It slightly reminds me of the first Alien movie with its peculiar and heavy synth effects. It knew when to slow down and ease you into the feeling, but it also knew when to grow intense and fast-paced. Many of the more spine-chilling tracks give you an uneasy feeling, like you're coming across an encounter that is out of your comfort zone, something unknown. Music that makes you think the walls are unsafe. It crawls under your skin, and I think that is the perfect example of how to set the tone for an eerie experience. Contrast to that, you have Vigil. There's a low hum. It feels like it vibrates within you in a calming way. Like it's bringing back old fond memories. The horns join like a dance in your chest. The notes are slow and dramatic, like it's really trying to hit home something old and mystical. I can't quite describe the feeling it gives you. You hear it at first at the main menu, but it doesn't quite hit the same as it does later in the game. You're nearing the end there. You fought so much of the game to be here, and yet some mysterious force has stopped you. So much of the game gives you hints that you're on a tight deadline, but in this moment, right here, it almost feels like peace. The calm before the storm. I don't want to give away too much, and those who know what I'm talking about may feel the same way, or they might click with other tracks more. But it's something you can't experience until you play it for yourself. I only hope I made enough sense trying to describe how the music felt to me. Vigil definitely hit close to home. Like I said at the beginning, I don't want to spoil too much of the game because I actually want this to encourage people to give it a shot. I wish I'd paid for it now that I have played it, but I can almost guarantee I wouldn't have if it wasn't on Game Pass. Now the Legendary Edition is out, and though it's on Game Pass, I would love to get a hard copy of it to add to my collection. So let's get into why this game is so memorable. As Commander Shepard, you find yourself tasked with fighting an unknown but incredibly dangerous threat that will endanger the whole galaxy. You build yourself a loyal crew of soldiers and squad mates from all backgrounds who plan to help every step of the way to what could be the final fight for all species. There will be trials and sacrifices made along the way that will only hurt more after you've spent so much time with your crew. There will be arguments and political struggles that try to hold you back as it feels like you're the only one who knows what's really at stake. I couldn't help but want to visit each and every person that you pick up, learning more about their backstory and uncovering more history of the world. Plus, the humor hidden inside makes it worth investigating more. There are lighthearted moments mixed with choices that feel impossible to make, but if you play this game, you learn how much character and story there is to uncover and feel a part of it. This game was something I looked forward to playing at the end of every day. Even though I found some flaws, they were completely outweighed by the positives. This game was fun, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. The jokes made me laugh, the stories made me feel tense. The decisions were sometimes so difficult that I'd pause the game and think on it for a bit. And I think if a game can make you sit there and think about one fictional decision, or many decisions, it's done its job well. Thank you for watching my video. And if you came across the Arachne songs by accident like I did and got completely freaked out, please let me know. Or if you didn't, but know what I'm talking about, how did you find out about them? Let me know in the comments below, feel free to like and subscribe, and as always, don't forget to fly your freak flag for the next video.